I'm gonna go ahead and record it because why not? I don't know. Yeah. What are you learning about yourself?
Put me on the spot like that. Um, well,
All on the spot here in Zoom.
the reading prompts pretty much start the gears in my head turning about, oh, what can I do to change how I'm doing things now? Like, especially this week's reading. I took a lot more notes this week.
Okay.
And that ritual thing. And I'm glad you brought that up in the artist talk because I like immediately light bulb. Oh hey, just like our reading, I see a ritual pattern. Um, I kind of wanted to start my own ritual.
Yeah.
I mean, things have been chaotic with COVID, so everything's kind of like changed since this began, and it's gonna change again when everything goes back to normal. So
Yeah. Well, like what? Yeah. What is normal going to be anymore? I mean,
yeah,
I think all of this is kind of like pointing out uh, maybe that there is no such thing as normal, and perhaps there is such a thing as complacency.
mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, through this we're learning sort of not to be as complacent, or that it's a challenge to sort of dig ourselves out of uh, what comes easy. Um, you know, uh, just before we get into the full reading, I this is my first time reading this as well, which is honestly, I'm gonna be real frank with you guys. Usually the case with all of the readings that I'm doing, I'll do like a quick Anna, welcome. I don't think hello Anna, thank you for joining. She's got a blanket on her head. That's a definite mood right there. So I was saying this is sort of the first time that I'm reading a lot of these. I got in preparation for this class, I got like a big old stack of books that came from like some rando, not BuzzFeed, but might as well be article that said like, these are the books that should be on every artist bookshelf. And I was like, all right, well, I'm an artist, so, and they're artists, so maybe I should like start reading some of these books. Um, but again, it's like I can't make us read an entire book, so I'm trying to flip through them and scan and find things that are relevant to what you guys are going through, but also some of the talks that we're having. But I'm glad you said that you're learning a lot about yourself, because that in a sense is what the whole purpose of this is. It's to figure out who you are in this new space, and how we can set you up for success. But yeah, so this is my first time reading this book. I read our reading last night, and then I got like so excited about how she writes that I ended up reading another chapter. So I cannot recommend The Creative Habit, Learn It and Use It for Life by Twyla Tharp enough. Like, if you can get a used copy on Amazon or from the library, highly recommend. It's really easy to read, and it's really entertaining. And I think a lot of the subjects of the chapters are gonna touch on, I think, things that are relevant to us. So with that said, what did you guys think? This chapter was rituals of preparation. We can chime in at any point. And you guys don't have to stay muted if you don't need to. That way we can kind of bounce off of one another.
I think for me, at least, reading about rituals in particular, a lot of them seemed like kind of like, I guess, quote unquote, good examples of rituals. And then it got me thinking about maybe some good things that I do, like when I get up and I have coffee in the morning and do homework before classes. And then it made me start to think about like my weekend rituals where I sleep in really late and just kind of stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I guess it made me kind of reevaluate how I'm spending my free time, because I feel like the free time that I get is so rare to begin with. And then just with classes and everything and trying to adjust just the world right now, I feel like I might have slipped into maybe some not so great rituals. So just that whole kind of discussion kind of really resonated with me, I feel like.
Well, I will say, remember it is a choice. So, and in some of the other reading discussions we talked about, we choose our own perspective. So you, like, I would question, how would you guys define ritual? And how that definition might differ for the word habit. So I don't know if you guys have a thought. Like ritual, she sort of describes it in an almost like quasi-religious, yet decisive way. Like it's something you choose to do actively, and then it sort of becomes habit. Whereas like I think, yeah, maybe some of the stuff that you're talking about is more like habits or patterns. But again, it's like it's that sticking point of decision making. So you identified that. So I mean, tell us more about that. Like, what did you think of, like strategies of how to change it, or what would be a better use of your time?
I feel like that's kind of where I'm at now. Like I'm trying to think how I can. I made me like reevaluate my time. I think was the point I'm trying to get at. But like it's like difficult. I think to define ritual, at least for myself. I know, and trying to figure out maybe what I could do in place of other habits back and forth. I don't know. It's difficult. I feel like.
But I think it's work-life balance too, right?
Mhm.
Like you said, you get so very little free time.
Mhm.
We now have to like be a little bit more aware and conscious of how we're using that time.
For sure.
Or like, are you guys suffering from burnout at all? Like that topic came up like with Peter's talk. So I like wrote it down. I was like, is anybody else freaking out on a daily basis?
I feel like I'm desperately trying to avoid a burnout. Like I feel like I can feel it coming on, and I keep trying to motivate myself to like push past it, I think.
Like push past it, or you like take a breath?
I probably need to take more breaths, honestly. I feel like I'm so focused on go, go, go and try to just avoid thinking about it too much. And I probably need to take a step back and like maybe, take some time for myself mentally, emotionally, all of that.
So and I'll open this up to sort of everybody else to chime in. How can we use rituals to sort of be implemented in this idea of self-care maybe, but also use it as a mechanism to create a space for creativity and for making and for output in a way that maybe feeds into that self-care, because making in and of itself can be cathartic. We can have that moment where we get keyed in, and it becomes less like work and more like play. Any thoughts? It's such an odd time to do this because I feel like everybody's like squeezing in lunch. It's like re-upping coffee and then like shoving food in your face before you have to like run off to your next Zoom meeting. And I apologize for the squeaking in the background because my dog is like playing with a squeaking cactus. So, yes, Anna.
Show dog.
Say what?
Show the dog.
I don't know if you guys can see her. She's currently eating my comforter on the floor. because, you know, she can't go 2 Zoom meetings in a row without destroying something.
But I think ritual, oh, it looks like I lick batteries for fun. Hold on. So I think ritual is something to kind of ground you and kind of like kind of center yourself in a way. Like I've been dissociating like the whole 2020, like time, what is time anymore? I don't know.
Accurate.
And
Also, I want to point out Anna was in one of my classes that got like put online in the spring. She was in the mold making and casting class, which I'm pretty sure all of us had a collective moment where we were like, now how's that gonna work? Which I just want to point out, I was also asking that question and semi-disassociating, so makes you feel any better.
so I used a lot of kind of, or at least I try to use some grounding exercises as rituals, like in the mornings, when my mornings were mine and not trucking my brother around to places, I would take like the hot showers, and then when I would get out, I would run my hands under really cold water. And that would, like, those two drastically different temperatures would kind of just bring me back to reality. And then, you know, having a morning coffee and then going on a walk where you can kind of, I mean, maybe it's just like a caffeine addiction where I felt like invigorated afterwards. But just like experiencing something other than staring at the 4 walls of my room was a good ritual to have. I just think a ritual could be like a small something to just kind of center yourself, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, I like went over this reading and I was trying to figure out if I even have one right now. Just because I think I connect with that like idea of displacement and not having like a routine and everything being absolute and utter chaos. Just because, you know, I mean, that happened to me too. Like I thought I was going to be moving states, you know, like a bunch of stuff changed for me. And, you know, like I now live in a new place, you know, I'm still here. A bunch of stuff happened, and I've been trying to figure out how to like even just ground myself within all of that change, on top of a global pandemic and everything else. And again, I think I also have a caffeine addiction. So, but there's something about that. There's something about the ritual of like preparing something. It's like coffee is like the first thing. It's the first thing that I create during the day. Like I have to sit there and I have to make my own coffee. So I guess that sort of brief act of making, sort of at least at the very least gets me up, gets my body moving, gets my hands doing something. And so yeah, I do think I have a connection with that being my first act of making every single day. But then I also thought like, I'm going to have to set up new routines. I'm going to have to set up new rituals because I don't have any of my own. It was interesting talking to Peter during the lecture. It's like he said that this whole COVID-19 daily report project came out of frustration, where he just went into his basement and he was just like, I got to do something. And then out of that, like, came this ritual. So, I mean, maybe something, you know, good can come out of our collective frustration, or at least we can like try to choose that for ourselves. Let's see. I like the idea of like creating a ritual as a set of rules for yourself, because it eliminates the idea of choice once you do it enough times. You know, it eliminates some of the questions and some of the fear that is attached to not doing things. You know, it eliminates the question, why am I doing that? why am I doing this? Because you already had the answer, because you've done it before, which is like, I got something out of it. And I think that's a really hard thing to internalize. And I think that's why doing something daily reinforces the answer to the questions that we have. And sort of slowly but surely like removes the doubt from our minds. I really like the verbiage that she used. You said grounded, but she uses this really active, wonderful language to describe these, what the function of ritual is. She says that it anchors you, or, you know, she talked about the executive having the morning meetings with their assistant and how it intensified their relationship or their connection with one another. She also said that, you know, it armored you against injury. And so I really liked all of those active descriptions of what ritual can mean, and how it can function from person to person. That also like begged the question, like, what does ritual do for you? Like you said, it grounds you, Anna. Like, what about you, Drew? What does it do?
Well, I have a fish now, so every time I get up in the morning, the fish starts making noises, apparently. It starts flipping around in the tank, so I'm like, okay, you want to be fed. So I feed it. I'm like, oh yeah, now I have to take my meds. Then it's like, from there on out, I'm like breezing through my day.
It like creates a chain link of event, or like a chain reaction of events.
I guess I could show the fish. It's not like,
Yeah, Anna wants to see all animals that are present.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can see it, but
I feel like having a routine or ritual kind of gives like my life a sense of purpose. Not that like without one I wouldn't have purpose, but it just like gives me a more confidence in that. Like this is the first time ever that I've lived alone, and I'm living like with my 1-year-old golden retriever. So I'm like, I have to be responsible and take care of him. And every day he wakes me up at 7 a.m. And so I get up at 7 a.m. and I take him on walks. And this happens every day. And this is the first time ever that this has ever happened. Like I normally sleep in till like noon and be like irresponsible. So like reading this was like really refreshing, because it's like, oh, I can actually somewhat relate to this now.
Well, yeah, and it's reframing what you're you know, sort of having to do anyways, and putting like a positive light on it. Like I adopted my dog over summer, like probably, you know, probably about a month ago. So I'm going through like the same thing. And I specifically, one of the reasons why I got her was because I was feeling that lack of routine. And, you know, my former dog now lives in Texas. And so there was like a big void and a big gap of routine and of like love that is puppy shaped. And so I finally just got to the point where I was like, I think that's something I need in my life. And so replacement dog, like replacement beagle happens, and she brings routine to my life. But yeah, you can literally like reframe it, like not as something you have to do, but as something that you're choosing to do, and it puts you in a better mindset. On some days, I know dog ownership is hard.
So what if we're like stuck in a place where it's hard, like practically impossible to reframe the mindset just because of like all of the obligations that we have to others, and we don't have time for ourselves or to even begin to reestablish our own rituals. Like I'm stuck at my parents' house.
Yeah.
And it's a lot to,
Because you're driving your
it's a lot to deal with. Like as soon as this Zoom call is over, I have to go and clean up the house because I guess my aunt is dropping by today, but I was going to use today to like paint and work on stuff, but I'm being told to clean. Oh, I can't tell my parents no.
Yeah. But you can request dialogue with them, and you can discuss boundaries and needs. So they can't give you something that you aren't willing to ask for. So I would say creating a space for that dialogue, taking 5 minutes to say to them, like, whenever you guys get a chance, I would like to set aside a time that we can discuss how we can make this situation that we're in effective for all of us. And I would specifically like to touch on what I need and how you can allow me to get there. A lot of it is just asking for things. You'd be surprised you would be surprised how people will show up for you when you ask them to, but they won't come to a Zoom meeting that you didn't schedule. Put it that way. You gotta set the schedule for it, because it's important to do, because otherwise you're gonna be blanket Anna indefinitely. But also I would say, like, when you're doing those things that like you need to do to sort of support the household and all of those stuff, like try to find a way to have it like serve you as well. So if you have to like clean up the house and do those things, like find a podcast that you want to engage with, or would help you, or even just entertain you, so that you can then not only feel like you're serving others, but that you're also getting a moment for yourself as well. And so it's those little things that you do, like when you feel like you're doing something wholeheartedly for everybody else, find a way to insert yourself into that, or at least try to find a way that you can pivot it to where it also serves you. The best thing that I got. But setting boundaries is also good too. Although my dog has like no boundaries, so. But I asked for that. Anybody else? Does anybody have any like suggestions or advice as well? There's no format for this class, so we can just talk about whatever we want, really.
I for the creative part, like maybe a ritual, because I was always thinking about how am I going to motivate myself to create art after I graduate, because right now I feel motivated by my classes and the projects to force myself to start the creation process. And I think the ritual that I was thinking of was maybe just like grab a random medium off of my shelf of whatever I got over here and just start experimenting with it, or playing around with it, or put a bunch of objects in one hat and a bunch of mediums in another hat, and just pick and choose and see what I come up with, and then just do something with that combination.
I mean,
and just start doing stuff.
The hardest, I will tell you, as a person who like went through I was under the academic blanket for 7 years between undergrad and graduate school, and I went straight through. So like I didn't have like a period where like any gap years in between those. So it was a real shock when I like got out of grad school. Nobody was forcing me to do anything, and it is really hard to make like your own artwork when you're thinking about other things like paying bills, or maybe you get a job in graphic design at like a firm, or as a fabricator making other people's artwork. There is something that happens where you give your creativity to your job, and so that can be really difficult. But I will just say, like, those strategies that you're talking about are great. And I mean, I think Peter talked about it in his lecture. The hardest thing about all of this is just starting, just doing. And I think it's important to remember that you don't have, your job isn't to judge what you're making, it's just to make it. And the only way you're going to make it is if you start. And it doesn't have to be big or important or special. It can be tiny and momentary, and maybe you might take a moment to take a photograph and then not look at it for a really, really long time, but then you will go back, look at the photograph, and then create a drawing from the photograph, and then a sculpture from the drawing. Like that's how I've worked. Like there are giant swatches of time where I was not able to make anything. It's super depressing. And in those moments, I would literally document how depressing it was.
Mm.
I would document it. And then I later turned those documents into collages that were digital. And then I turned those, into drawings. And then I turned that into the sculpture when I finally had the facilities and the time and the money. So it's hard, but it's about giving yourself credit for what you can do. Like at that moment, I was able to take kind of like overly dramatic selfies. And so I did that. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't a waste of my time. It wasn't, it wasn't useless. I ended up turning it into something. So anything that you guys are capable of doing right now, like we don't know what it's going to turn into in months or years. We don't know. Anybody else? What else do we got? I like that she gave us all of the examples of everybody's different rituals and how like disparate they are. One of the things that I've been finding really funny is like, well, talking to you guys, right? So doing these little meetings, but also like, over the summer, it's like I was occasionally doing like video calls or Zoom calls like with friends and family. And like just the discussion that we would have about like what we've been doing. And to a certain extent, I think that everybody's been asking each other what their rituals are without actually phrasing it in that way. Because everybody's been like, how's quarantine been for you? And asking sort of those questions of like, what's something new that you guys have picked up or gotten into? I believe she sort of phrased it as there's no one ideal condition for creativity. What works for one person is useless for another. And so I wrote that down, and then added the question, where does academia fall into this? If there's no ideal condition for creativity, how does art school exist? And what is the function of art school if like creativity can come out of a myriad of situations? That seems like a dangerous question for an art instructor to ask, because if there's no function for art school, then why are we here? But anybody have any insight into that?
Maybe the purpose is to just create some sort of foundation that everyone can work off of.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what we call the beginning classes that you guys take, right? We call it foundations. And Ashley, I think it plays into what you were talking about. It's like you're worried about not having that structure when you graduate. Like you have to figure out how to create your own structure. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons why I gravitated towards this reading is that can be really hard. And I think, her ritual was to hail a cab. So we set up rituals that are simple, that sort of set off that chain reaction. And it's because everything about baking is hard, or it can be. And so we need that little trigger that sets off, I guess, our muscle memory almost. in our brains. And that trigger needs to be really easy to do. So like making coffee, you know, like hailing a cab, it needs to be like really easy, or forced upon you, like, you know, feeding this dog that will yell at me if I don't.
I feel like another aspect of like going back to the whole art classes thing,
Yeah.
for me at least so far, it's been like just the sense of community I think that I've had, and being able to kind of see what other people are creating, I get like inspiration from that, and just getting to interact with other people that I think are like equally passionate about things and putting effort into their work. Getting to see that has really helped me, just even like outside of the classroom, like with just creating work in general. So I feel like that aspect of community has been like a huge part of like taking art classes and being in school for that kind of thing. So
How's that changed?
I mean,
are you still getting your fix?
honestly, I'm kind of surprised at how much I've still felt connected to people, I feel like. And I know when my high school like switched over to online classes, I definitely didn't have that sense of connection anymore, and that's where I kind of lost, I think, a lot of motivation. But I think a different aspect to being in art classes, and this being my first year of college for me, has been seeing how motivated everyone is to keep, like, I guess, pushing past their situation and the situation just of the world right now. And I think that's been inspiring to see. And it's definitely different in this environment, because there seems to be a lot more drive, I think, than there was in, you know, high school and everything like that. So it's really helpful, I feel like.
Well, I think it's also like enough time has passed. Like, it's 6 months.
Yeah.
Like we've been doing this for 6 months. I like put that together the other day, and I was like, man, it's like, has it really been that long? And I think to a certain extent, it's like I like to sort of phrase it as like the stages of grief. Like,
Yeah.
had to go through like the stages of grief while we're in quarantine, and I think one of those stages ultimately has become boredom. And so we are craving that interaction again, and we're craving, you know, I refer to it as like getting your fix, right? So we're craving those interaction. We're craving, you know, food from restaurants that have closed. We're craving, you know, all of these things that we used to have, and we're trying to figure out at least alternative spaces to foster those interactions, or to at least slightly fill those gaps. Because we're done, you know, we're over kind of like complaining, and we're over being like, I know, we're over it. I know, you too. We're kind of over a lot of the other stages, or they still exist and they come back in, but maybe not as intensely. You know, but at a certain point, it's like enough is enough, and we gotta do something. So I'm glad you're finding that niche place where you think more people are showing up, because I also see that, and I'm happy. I'm happy about it. Like today's lecture with Peter, 75 people logged on today. And were there for that talk. And I don't know, it was like after I ended that meeting, I felt like I was buzzing, like with energy, because it went so well. He speaks about his work in such a way that it made me want to get in the studio and make something.
Yeah, it was very inspirational. Like how he just came up with that concept and was just like, this is it, this is what I'm doing.
And I recorded the lecture, so I'll get it posted whenever they send me the video. It's good. It's good. You're gonna like it. I liked that she talked about rituals. It says, by making the start of the sequence automatic, they replace doubt and fear with comfort and routine. And then I made my own note, with ritual comes serenity. So we can like I said, the hardest thing is starting that. And I thought it was great that, like, you know, he basically does this thing, or figured out a way that he can continue doing it every single day. And frankly, I'm just impressed that anybody can work and output and create something every single day. You know, I'm reminded of like last fall when I was working on like my show, like I thought I was gonna like die. I was working in the studio. I was teaching 4 classes at 2 different universities, and I was working in the studio every day. And I definitely suffered from burnout, and honestly felt like I wasn't going to reach the finish line. But like I did. And then it was like, after that show opened, it was like, I don't know. I actually think it affected my immune system. I ended up getting sick 3 times after that show opened. So yeah, it's interesting to see somebody that is capable of doing it on such like a prolonged, like month-long spectrum. Now granted, like they're drawings. You know, he's not like, he wasn't like working, you know, on like some of his sculptural pieces for like, you know, 12 hours a day, every day, and teaching all of his classes at MCAD. So I think there's definitely a takeaway there, which is don't dictate the amount of what you make every day, but just set yourself up to make something every day. And then, yeah, don't pass judgment on how much you get done. I started doing therapy over the summer, and she has me doing these like exercises in gratitude. And so every single day I'm supposed to think about, you know, 4 things that happened during the day that I was grateful for. And I gotta say, ever since I started sort of doing that exercise, I'm not only, it's shifted my perspective of how I'm viewing each day, but also how I'm viewing myself. I think like I'm giving myself a little bit more credit for the things that I do accomplish. And I get to the end of the day and I'm like, man, I sent out so many emails today, rather than, you know, thinking about all of the things that I didn't do. So I would encourage you guys to sort of maybe try that out as well. Because you might realize that you've been incredibly productive through all of this. Let's see. What about the idea of self-reliance? Jess says, you think COVID has helped you as an artist to step outside of your comfort zone? Okay, do you want to speak to that a little bit? Like maybe defining the comfort zone?
Yeah, sorry, my computer, the camera's being a little wonky today.
Oh, no,
Yeah, so before COVID, I pretty much stuck to the same routine. I didn't really try anything new. But I guess after being like stuck in your house for so long, you start trying all sorts of new things.
mm-hmm.
And eventually you run out of art supplies, so you have to make your own too, and that changes things.
I like that.
Like if you have ink and you don't have anything to paint it with, you can use sticks, and it actually turns out to be like really raspy and cool looking.
Or if you don't have ink, you can use coffee and tea.
Yep, that works too.
So yeah, I mean, I never would have thought that I would create a video about how to make sculpture using sugar and water, but that happened.
Oh wow!
It's actually really rad. So
I didn't know you could do that.
Neither did I, but I also learned that you can make your own reusable mold making material using like gelatin and glycerin syrup. Like there's so much stuff in the kitchen that can be co-opted and used as art making materials. so that like anytime anybody like sort of complains or tells me like I don't have a studio or I can't get studio access or you know I can't make that because we no longer have 24-hour access at the studios, I'm just like, well, do you have 24-hour access to your kitchen? Because that's the perfect place. It's like those are surfaces that you wipe down anyways, so like just keep doing that. You're being spoiled. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. I do think, yeah, you guys are kind of like, you guys are being challenged in a way that you know, most people aren't until after they've already graduated. What about the idea, she sort of like breaks down the things that we're left in a room with that we think about on a day-to-day basis. She broke it down to 10 items: body, ambition, needs, memories, distractions, fears, ideas, passions, goals, and prejudices. And sort of define that all of that makes up a person, right? And some of it is good and some of it is productive, but then some of it can actually inhibit our productivity. So what are some of these fears that you guys have?
Wasting my art supplies on a failed project.
There is no failed project. You learn something from everything that you do.
Yeah, and you said you were repurposing, well, not repurposing, you were reusing your stuff to make a project.
Oh, you can cannibalize anything.
Yeah, so I was like, well, yeah, I could do that too.
Yeah, like I revisit stuff a lot, you know, and I do that. I look up my interests and I think I try to figure out if they've changed, like since I was in undergrad. And what I think I realized with that last show that I did at Webster, which is that like I'm still the same nerd that like is attracted to like space age looking like sci-fi nonsense and like, you know, Halloween masks and being a kid, and I don't know if that's ever going to change. You know, my level of craftsmanship has changed, level of sophistication with those materials has changed, but you know, I think we're always good with, we're just rolling the same ball around, you know, just in a different direction. But again, so you said that fear, I immediately challenged that fear. So that's what you guys have to learn to do in your own head, which is half of the battle, is putting your thoughts on trial, putting those fears, basically allowing them to exist, acknowledging that they're there, and then challenging their sort of role as to whether it's real or not. Most of the times these are irrational thoughts. They aren't real. Like the you know, like people will laugh at you. Okay, would that be the worst thing in the world? Humor has a wonderful place in making. Now, granted, usually we want people to be laughing with us, not at us, but also if you're going to be, do you really want a person who laughs at other people do you really want to place value in that person's opinion? No. That's a judgmental person that, you know, laughs at people when they are being genuine. So yeah, I just like this idea that like she kept saying like not the people I respect, and I was just like, I was reminded by like you know, the stupid like hashtag trends or whatever, like captions that people put on Instagram where it's like find your tribe or like squad goals, but like there is something to that, which is like knowing whose opinion you care about and then thinking about those people when you're making. Like I know I make a lot of jokes sometimes when I talk about like my artwork. I refer to it as sad girl art. And I know that my artwork isn't for everybody, and some people might try to say that like it's, you know, it's like emo sad girl art, but you know, I proudly wear that badge. I call it that myself, and that's because I know that the people that get something out of the things that I make, you know, those are my people. Those are the people that like I want to come up to me after an artist talk or after an exhibition and talk about the work. And those are the people that are going to want to show the work too. So you guys are going to apply to an infinite amount of things, and you're going to get a lot of rejection letters. And I want you to know that that's okay, because with every single rejection letter that you get, you slowly are defining, you're slowly defining where your place is in the art world. With every single one, you can figure out like which juror you know, maybe doesn't vibe with what you do. You can figure out which curators, like, you know, are looking for something different. And you can potentially pivot and try to figure out how your artwork can fit within that realm. But with every single rejection letter, you learn something new. Let's see, somebody's done it before. We literally just talked on the topic that, like, you know, I've made my own artwork before and I keep making it. And I like came to St. Louis for the first time and met Brian Zimmerman, and I was just like, oh, we make the same artwork. And that was a real fun discovery to make. But at the same time, it's we make similar artwork, but in completely different ways. And so, like, that's not necessarily grounded in reality either. She goes, you know, piece by piece and breaks down all of those fears. So I would challenge you guys to write them down, the ones that you have whenever you do have them. And then literally on the opposite page, right across from it, challenge it. Challenge the reality of it. Ask more questions, unpack it, if you will, and see if it has any grounds in reality. Because I guarantee you most of the time, those fears do not. I thought I loved the quote that she did from Dostoevsky's The Demons. I don't know if anybody else like highlighted that, but it said, "Kid, give me 1 second. You're being crazy." Yeah. So the quote was, "I see my fears being cast into the bodies of wild boars and hogs. I watch them rush to a cliff where they fall to their deaths." So I love that as an exercise. Like if you're laying awake and can't sleep at night because you're having so much anxiety, imagine each and every single one of those little worries and thoughts being cast into a boar and then running off of a cliff. Like, that's just the sort of like goth emo nonsense that like I really connected with. It's like, picture the death of fear, kill it, is what I wrote down next to it. But then also like imagine what that will do for like your psyche. Because if there is no fear, then like there's nothing to stop us. And then imagine the level of output that would sort of like, you know, pour out from that kind of headspace. Does anybody else have sort of a kind of, we talked about the guy who cleans his house and that metaphor of like literally cleaning out the cobwebs of his brain whenever he has like writer's block. Does anybody else have a ritual for when that happens? Like when you can't seem to make? It couldn't be cleaning. One of mine is cleaning. Like if I don't feel like making, or I'll somehow justify cleaning my entire house as a means of putting off what I really need to be doing.
I do that too, or I'll like make myself a nice meal or something. And that way, like I still feel like I'm being productive. I'm not making art, but I'm being productive in other ways.
Or you're literally feeding yourself, you're nourishing yourself in one way that then in turn might almost like have a chain reaction where it will trigger the other thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought the quote was interesting. The mechanism by which we convert the chemistry of pessimism into optimism is still uncharted. Meaning that like we don't know what the mechanism is, and so we have to keep trying something. Even if it is like this mumbo jumbo magical thinking, that the idea of if I light this candle at this time every day, something magical will happen, or my mood will change. I love the optimism of that idea of the ritual. It's like saying like, well, that didn't work, but I'm going to keep trying it. And there's something to sticking to an idea, and it's almost like self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like if you do it enough times, the statistics will show that eventually one time it will work. So yeah, I really like that idea. What else? She talked about sort of fasting from things. And sort of, again, I think it goes back into Miles, that idea of like recognizing those maybe bad patterns. And those things that like prevent us from being like truly as productive as we could be. I really like, what did you guys think of the anecdote of like, where's your pencil? Did anybody figure out what their personal version of the pencil is in that situation?
A sketch pad and a pencil.
A sketch pad and a pencil?
Yeah.
I thought about that. I like read that whole story and I was like, you know what? I was like, I need to go back to having a sketchbook at all times and carrying around pencils, because it was a habit that I had in New York. And I also used to ride the subway a lot, and so it was something to do if like the train ever got delayed. But I did get I got some great work out of that. And that that little anecdote kind of reminded me like, it's something I need to do. I just like the inevitability of it. He was like, if there's a pencil in your pocket, there's a good chance that one day you'll feel tempted to use it. I think that's why, too, a lot of people like carry around books like in their bags. Even if they're going to a social gathering, they will put a book in their bag just in case. But I think, yeah, there's something about that has this like this magnetic idea, which is that like you're setting yourself up to succeed and to learn something or to be open to the universe by carrying around a book or a sketchbook and a pencil. I mean, this is a more complicated one. Do you guys have a problem with solitude? Do you have to build up a tolerance for solitude, or are you good at it?
I'm a daydreamer at heart, so.
All right. So we're getting a lot of yeses.
I feel like it depends on the day for me. I don't know. Like, there's days where I'm just like, I don't want to interact with people. I'm perfectly fine with just doing my own thing. But like, there's other days where I almost need that human interaction. And I feel like especially with COVID, I've really wanted that more and more, is being able to get out and, talk to people. And at the same time, I feel like I kind of treasure that more now. And definitely solitude has become harder, I think, for me to cope with as, we did like quarantine and all that. It was interesting for me. So.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, she summed it up really well. Alone is a fact, a condition where no one else is around. That is a state of being. Loneliness is how you feel about that fact.
Mm-hmm.
Like I read that and I was just like, okay. But then I thought about that idea of challenging thoughts, and I was just like, okay, well, in those moments of loneliness, or those moments where we feel like we're craving those things more, again, doing that shift of thinking, or choosing a different perspective of not seeing it as a moment where we feel lonely, but rather we choose to honor being alone, and the sort of gifts that can come from that situation.
Reading that was really reassuring, yeah, because it was like very much putting into perspective that it was more of a mindset thing, and that there's nothing like inherently bad about, you know, having a long time. Yeah.
Well, and I'm not here to tell anybody like not to feel their feelings, like that. No, feel your feelings. Let them, you know, take time and space that they need. But again, sort of a mantra that a friend of mine shared with me a few years ago that I always carry with me is no feeling is final. No feeling is going to last forever. Some of them may, you know, some of them may choose to move in to the apartment of our hearts and our minds for a little bit longer than we'd like, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be there forever. And so I just find myself sort of like repeating that, and understanding that like just because you're feeling lonely, feelings don't last forever. And eventually feelings will change. And yeah, I think that's been really helpful and really kind of an optimistic way to look at it throughout all of this. Well, and just like remembering that solitude is an unavoidable part of creativity, and the byproduct of that process is self-reliance. It's being stronger and more resilient as not only an artist but as a person. So if we kind of remind ourselves that the product of this whole thing that we're going through collectively is that we're all going to be more resilient people, and that's kind of, you know, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful outcome. Let's see. We talked about your fears, so I won't go into that again. Yeah, and then the last thing she sort of talks about is things that she gives up for a week. So did that strike a chord with anyone and they thought about something that they might benefit from giving up, even if it's just temporarily?
Yes, to be honest. Definitely, me being a Christian and all, I go for this like for like an entire month. Then when I go through Lent, I mean, it's hard to go for just that. Give up that one thing that you what's the word I'm looking for? That you hunger over, I'm guessing. The thing that you, I mean.
The thing that would be hard to sacrifice, and therefore the sacrifice is necessary.
Yeah, I mean, sacrifice is necessary, and I mean, I can get over it for a good time. But I mean, it's not always so easy to do, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think that's sort of part of it, is that like it's not supposed to be easy, and that's because the outcome usually is really worth it.
It is.
Anybody else? Did you think anything that you want to sacrifice? I especially like that she put the news, because I think that particular thing, giving it up for a week, would be incredibly helpful in terms of maybe our mindsets at times. We were talking about burnout in the lecture earlier, and I think the constantly changing news cycle has been leading to some mental burnout, just because there is so much going on in the world. So that's one that I would suggest. But again, 2020 is a burnout. Yep, pretty much. Yeah, anything else? I thought the mirror one was strange. Like, not using a mirror would be incredibly difficult, especially like while driving. Like it would be, I mean, that's one that you could do in like the New York subway system, I think, but in like a non-commuter city or in a commuter city where people drive, you're going to see a mirror.
I was gonna say I accidentally, like not accidentally, but I rearranged my room over quarantine, and I had like a big like full length mirror, and I ended up getting rid of it because it was just taking up a lot of room, so I didn't have this massive mirror in my room anymore, and I noticed that made kind of a difference in if like I would kind of nitpick things about my appearance or how I looked for the day because it was just right there. There was a mirror in my room. But then if I had to like go see something, I'd have to like walk to the bathroom and like look at my face in that mirror. So it really like eliminated the amount of times in a day that I was like standing in front of my mirror, like picking out these things in my appearance. So like it kind of helped in a way because I was too lazy to get up and go look in an actual mirror. But it definitely was like a positive thing. So that was interesting.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I guess that is a good point. It's like you could like minimize it. Any sort of thing that you do will help a little bit. Like if the only time you see a mirror is like when you're changing lanes, I think you've got like bigger problems to be focusing on than like, you know, what you look like in that mirror. So that's a good point. Thank you for that. I really want to be able to do the clock one, like the number one. I would love to not be able to know what time it is or, you know, that feeling when you go in the studio and you get to just like not worry about whether it's daytime or nighttime, but you're just making. I would love to be able to do that, but ever since school started back, I feel like I've been playing catch up at all times, and working all the time. So yeah, it's been a rough start, but I think it'll be interesting when I start to draw those boundaries and start to get making again. So I don't know if anybody else is struggling with that. I just thought I'd share. All right. Well, that was pretty much what we had for today. Does anybody have any final comments or anything that we want to share with the group? No? All right. Well, I'm glad I got to talk to you guys today. I was worried that with posting it on Tuesday that nobody was going to have time or get to read it. So I'm glad that I love this reading, and I'm glad that you guys were able to read it and take away some stuff from it. And like I said, like this book is crazy good. So I know nobody has free time nowadays, but with books, the great thing is you can get them and then go back to them later, especially if you have a physical copy. But again, remember, it's Twyla Tharp, The Creative Habit. Learn it and use it for life. It's really impacting how I'm thinking about things lately, and hopefully you guys could get more from it too. All right, you guys have a good day. I'll see you later.
Do you have 2 minutes after?
Yeah.
Not even 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe like 30 seconds.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
So, am I good now?
Yeah, you should be good, Peyton.
Oh yeah, perfect. I want to make sure I had all 3.
Yeah, I like it. You're knocking it out of the park just right off the bat.
Definitely, yeah. I may come some more later on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to anymore, but you're invited to all of them. So.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll think about it.
All right. We'll see you later, Peyton.
Yep. See ya.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right. What you need?
Oh, you're still recording. I was like, ah.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for the reminder.